So you've chosen your menu and now it's time for the grocery shopping. In the first video of this series, I spoke about how you're going to need to weave your menu into one giant recipe. And that step comes in handy for this process as well. I go through all the recipes, look at the ingredients, and group together any like recipes and their amounts. So this means that if one recipe calls for 1 cup of milk, but another recipe calls for 3 cups of milk, I need to buy whatever container of milk allows me to have 4 cups of milk. If one recipe calls for 1 clove of garlic, but another recipe calls for a whole bulb of garlic, I need 2 bulbs of garlic to make sure that I actually have everything I need. The point of this is that when you're doing the shopping, you have an idea of the total amounts that you need. We're trying to avoid you having to circle the store multiple times. At this point, I would also try and group your ingredients by different sections of the grocery store. So like the dry goods, the produce, the meats, the dairy, things like that. We're just trying to do as much prep beforehand so that you can be in and out of the store if that's what you need to do. Now that that's all straightened out, let's head to the store. My bad, I definitely got ahead of myself. We actually need to do 3 rounds of shopping, and the first one is right here in your own home. But before we get into that, I also didn't introduce myself. I'm Awosa, food lover and ambitious home cook. And the last couple of years, I've really tried to hone my skills with the home cooking thing, which led me to throwing a couple of dinner parties for my friends this year. That's how I picked up the tips and tricks that I'm sharing in this video with you guys today. If you heard me say 3 rounds of grocery shopping and your pockets started hurting, don't worry, because the first round is in your own home, because you probably have a lot of the items and stuff that you need for your dinner party. We're talking salt, oils, and depending on the menu and the ingredients that you've chosen, you might even have some of the produce too. The only thing that I will say is don't count the things in your fridge that you know you're gonna eat for your dinner party. Ideally, you're doing this step a little while before your dinner party, so don't count the 3 eggs in your fridge if you know they're making its way into an omelet tomorrow. The other 2 rounds of shopping are for everything else that you need, but it's just split up to make your life easier. You could definitely do it all at one time, but I wouldn't really recommend it. So, once you've checked off what you have at home, the second round of shopping can take place days, if not weeks before. This time, you want to focus on non-perishables, things like grains, oats, anything canned, really anything that can keep. Splitting the shopping up like this just kind of reduces the pressure and allows you to actually build up some excitement. You'll start feeling a little bit more secure and like you're actually making progress on this dinner party. If you have any specialty items or ingredients on your list, this first round of grocery shopping is when I start keeping an eye out to make sure that I can actually spot the things that I'm going to need. If you don't see it on this round, then maybe think about start calling different stores or maybe checking ahead to see if you need to order something online just to make sure that you have it in time for your dinner party. On the last round of shopping, now I'm getting my meats, cheese, dairy, leafy greens, herbs. I don't have a lot of fridge real estate, so it's helpful for me to get the things that I need a little closer to the date so that I can get them as fresh as possible and I'm not taking up too much space in general. So this round I'll do a day or 2 before, but pay attention to what your recipe calls for, because if you need to be marinating something for like 48 hours, don't try and grocery shop for it the day before. So think about it this way. You want to buy items in time for prep and not just in time for the dinner party. We touched on produce seasons and freshness a bit in the first video, so make sure to check that out if you haven't seen it already. My best tip is to make sure that you choose the best ingredients that you have available to you at your price point. So I'm not going to tell you guys where to shop or what to shop. You know your budget, so work within that, but choose the best that you can. You can season all you want, but if the ingredients that you're starting out with have no flavor or they're going bad, you're really just not setting yourself up, and no amount of seasoning will cover that up. Just have your phone in hand and be ready to do your Googles whenever you see an ingredient that you want to purchase. I generally look up how to tell if an item is ripe or how to choose a particular fruit or vegetable at the grocery store, and that's what I would recommend that you guys do too. There is way too much produce and too much food out there to tell you guys how to choose every single ingredient, but there are some general guidelines that I do like to follow. You'll want to avoid off colors, browning on leaves, bruising on vegetables and fruits, and wilting on greens and herbs. In fact, you might actually need to avoid obvious rot as well, because sometimes at the grocery store you do see that. For meats and seafood, bright colors, no strong smells, and avoiding sliminess is a good guideline to follow. For seafood like shrimp and salmon, you're probably better off buying frozen than buying the already thawed food sitting on ice in front of you guys. The freezer aisle has the fish that they bought and kept frozen, rather than the fish that's sitting on ice, which is caught, frozen, thawed, and then placed in front of you guys. The freezer section often captures things at the peak of their freshness, so don't be afraid of the freezer aisle. Once you have everything, go home and look at the individual recipes and make sure that you actually have the items that you need. I like to lay out everything in front of me, and then you can start arranging things by category, but I usually will just make a mental note as I'm looking through the recipes and be like, okay, yeah, I have this, I have that, I have this, I have that. If you forget something, it's okay. Part of the reason why we did the shopping so early was to make sure that we would actually be able to go back to the store for last minute items in case we did forget anything. Now, let's talk about making a game plan and prep. After you've chosen your menu and you have a head count, now I like to go through the meals that I've chosen to make and make sure that I have enough serveware, dishes, utensils, things like that for the group that I'm cooking for. If you don't, you have a couple of different options. You can rent, you can borrow from friends and family, or you can actually buy. In my case, I just chose to buy because I knew that I was going to be doing these dinners more and more often, and it would be good to have a sustainable collection that I could use for each one, rather than using something like disposable plates and things like that that would just create more waste. But on this channel, we take our wins where we can. If you need to use paper plates because you don't want to deal with the stress and the hassle of washing dishes after, it's totally okay. In my case, my friend actually brought over some really nice plastic utensils that we ended up using, and that just took some of the stress off me. Now onto the food. Think about what can be done ahead of time. Again, we're just trying to make our lives easier. Often things like chopping veggies or making sauces can actually be prepared the day before. Once you decide what can be done ahead of time, group similar items together. So that means chopping all your veggies together, washing all your veggies together, brining all your proteins together, salting things that need to be salted together, seasoning things that need to be seasoned at the same time. When you group similar actions together, it allows your movements to get into a flow. And again, this will make you more efficient. Efficient. I feel like that's the name of the game here, but I'm just trying to tell you guys what I do to make my life easier. I really encourage you guys to think about what you can do ahead of time, and I encourage you to get as much of that done as you can. Last, the day before, I also like to set out all the platters and the way that I'm going to be serving things. If you're doing a tablescape or something like that, this would also be the time to get that prepared the day before the dinner party, so that's all just set and laid out. On the day of, think about the timing for the task. Things that take longer, like braises, stews, should be started ahead of time. And then things that are faster, like maybe putting the salad together or dressing the salad, can be done later, closer to when the guests arrive. What I like to do is to think about the end time or the start time of my dinner party. If this is starting now, what time do these dishes need to be ready? And then I work backwards from there. Once you've thought through your game plan, try as much as possible to stick to it. The day of the dinner party, it might be easy to forget the reasons why you made that game plan and start switching things around, but that's usually where things will go off the rails. For my last dinner party, I was supposed to make the dessert way ahead of time, but things got in the way and I figured, okay, I'll just do it later. Well, later comes and I realize I have a roast in the oven and it's cooking at a temperature that the dessert can't go in with it as well. So now we're talking about what to do if things go wrong. It's okay. Don't be so stuck on your game plan because it's supposed to make your life easier. If you end up stressing about not being able to follow the game plan, now we're actually defeating the purpose of it. So my dessert couldn't go into the oven at the time that it was supposed to. That just meant that my friends and family ended up sticking around a little bit longer to make sure that they enjoyed it. It's not ideal, but it happened and everyone was okay at the end of the day. Now, I've had my own experience using my tips and tricks and my own experience not using my tips and tricks. And I promise you, when I did use my tips and tricks, my life was so much easier and that dinner party went a lot better. I really hope that the tips and tricks that I've shared with you guys in this video will allow you to achieve the goal of this dinner party, which is just bringing your friends and family around you, eating together, enjoying the time that you guys are spending together, and doing it in a way that is as stress-free as possible.